Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. My name is Rob. I organize Idea to IPO. We hold events in Silicon Valley multiple times a week from San Jose to San Francisco. We've been doing events for a while. We always have a busy calendar of events. I'd like to highlight two events that are coming up. So Thursday, the 24th, we have a panel discussion, latest innovations in health tech. That's in Palo Alto. And then Tuesday, September the 13th, latest innovations in robotics. That's also in Palo Alto. So please check out the details for those events and all of our events on our website, ideatoipo.com. So now it's 7. So we were launched officially on February 1st, 2010. And at that time, we had no members and no events on our calendar. At this stage, we have over 50,000 members among all our meetup groups in the Bay Area. We've completed over 1,774 events. By any standard, by any measure, we're the most active, most prolific startup event organization in Silicon Valley, bar none. That's it? All right. Okay. I always have to say this. So if we're the most active, most prolific startup event organization in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is the global center of entrepreneurship and innovation, that would make us the most active, most prolific startup event organization in the world. It's a little better, but I'll take it, yeah. Our mission is to promote entrepreneurship, support entrepreneurs, build community, and provide value in the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem. To that end, we provide content that's practical, actionable, and relevant, stuff that you can actually use to succeed as entrepreneurs. We believe in building community because Silicon Valley is an aspirational ecosystem. It attracts people from all over the world who come here to do great things. I'd like to know who here is not originally from Silicon Valley? Almost the whole panel, and me. Who here was born and raised in Silicon Valley? Just 4 of you? Cool. Welcome. So whether you were born and raised here or you just arrived last night, it's important for us to provide multiple channels for you to meet people, build relationships, and grow your network. So in addition to our content-oriented events throughout the week, we also have some social events. Our next social event is a TGIF mixer, which we hold every few weeks, and it's going to be at the Hyatt Regency Santa Clara, and that's going to be Friday, August 18th. That's hosted by one of our team members, CJ Terrell. So check that out. With regard to value, it's important that we provide value at each and every one of our events. Not just value for your money, which is important because we know many entrepreneurs are struggling financially. So we make sure our events are affordable, and if you cannot afford the cover charge, let me know. We're always looking for team members to help us out, and there are a lot of benefits to being a team member besides coming to the events for free. And we make sure that we have a decent buffet meal at each and every one of our events. Was this a decent buffet meal? I'm glad somebody liked it. Anyway, I want to thank Shepard Mullen for sponsoring that fine meal. Let's hear it for Shepard Mullen. More importantly, though, at each and every one of our events, it's important that we provide value for your time, which is your most valuable resource. Anyone here getting any younger? Besides our moderator and the young lady in the back. So when you invest your valuable time to come to our events, we want to ensure that you maximize your ROI. We have many partners that help us do what we do. Law firms, venture capital firms, angel investor groups, incubators, accelerators, colleges, universities, lots of other players in Silicon Valley. Tonight, we're grateful to the College of San Mateo and the Small Business Development Center for hosting us at this beautiful venue. Is this a beautiful venue? Okay. We've held many events here, and we look forward to many more. They're a great partner, and we're honored and privileged to be collaborating with them. And they offer great services for entrepreneurs, and they're totally free of charge. So talk to me later. I can connect you with the Small Business Development Center that's based here at the College of San Mateo. Some of our partners are here tonight, and I'd like to have them come up and say a few words. Let's hear it for Kevin and the Silicon Valley Innovation Center.
Thank you, Rob. My name is Kevin. I am from Silicon Valley Innovation Center. And what we do, we connect outside the world with Silicon Valley. So if you have some of your clients or partners here in town and you would like them to learn more about Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley innovative culture, talk to me after this event or grab our business card and brochure over there. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. Next up, we have Ali from Planner.ai.
Thank you, Rob. We make B2B chatbots for healthcare. Chatbots for healthcare are best tool for messaging for chronic patients who want to have a judgment-free, private communication when they don't need to talk to their doctors. I have a booth over there. Please come see our demo, and we can talk. Thank you so much.
All right, next up we have Brian from Cloud Brigade.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, if you guys have any questions about AWS, if you have questions about how to reach more customers, if you have questions about who might be a good funding partner for you, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have in those realms. I'm Brian Phelps. My cards are at the table. I'm happy to help you. Thanks.
Next up, we have Svi from Optimizing Mind.
Hi. We help our customers understand their AI, figure out what exactly is their AI looking for, because sometimes AI might do well on training and test data, but it might be doing the recognition in ways that you wouldn't expect. If you would like a demonstration, we're in the booth back there. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Naeem from V Grocery.
Hello everyone, my name is Naeem. I am the founder of V Grocery Store. So as you saw it before in my laptop, it's a virtual grocery store. So you can walk inside Safeway or Whole Foods from your house. It's a virtual experience. So I'm trying to build up my team. So if you know anybody who wants to get some experience, technical or business experience, come and talk to me. And also I'm looking for potential co-founders. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Mike from CTO 911.
This won't come off. I'll stay here. Hi, my name is Mike from CTO 911. I offer consulting services for entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley. Help them with the end-to-end process of the startup. So whether you're beginner trying to get things going, or you need getting connected, or you need technical resources, or getting connected with funding, investment resources, or the end-to-end process. Or if you need somebody to help you build the engineering team, manage the technical process, end-to-end process, I can help you with that. So if you'd like to talk to me some more, come talk to me at the table. Enjoy the event.
So though our local mission is to support entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley, our greater mission, though, is to democratize entrepreneurship and innovation all around the world. To that end, we have a robust YouTube channel, youtube.com/idea-to-IPO. We have tons of videos. We've archived and documented many of our events, and this rich, valuable content is available on demand, anytime, anywhere, totally free of charge. It's whether you're in San Mateo, Palo Alto, Maui, Moscow, or Timbuktu. Anywhere in the world where you have access to Wi-Fi. Our partner in this endeavor is Tim Jeggers of Jeggers Films, one of the top professional videographers in all of Silicon Valley. Let's hear it for Tim.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Tim. I've been doing the videos for a majority of the idea to IPO events. I got my start here in the Bay Area a little over a decade ago. I've done everything from weddings and personal video stories to seminars and conferences, meetups, panels like this, and yeah, do a little bit of that, photography, and all over the Bay Area. Travel the country a little bit doing work, and that's pretty much my whole thing. So I'll give it back to Rob, and we'll get this thing started. Thank you for coming out.
Okay, so here's the schedule for the rest of the evening. We're going to get right into our panel discussion. Panel discussion is going to run until 8 o'clock. Please hold your questions. At 8 o'clock, we're going to open it up to audience questions. We're going to set up a microphone here. So we'd like you to get in line, go up to the microphone, ask your question, and we want to get in as many questions as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to our distinguished moderator. He is one of the top intellectual property attorneys in all of Silicon Valley. Let's hear it for Bill Allman.
So I love coming to these events. It may be the biggest, most dynamic organization in the world, but it's also, I found, to have great audiences who always have a wealth of experience to share with everyone else. So I'm from Shepherd Mullen. It's a general practice firm, about 800 attorneys. I'm not going to talk about it too much because usually people don't care that much. I'm an IP attorney, and I'm going to try to figure out what we have here in the audience today with a quick survey. So raise your hands if you qualify as a government employee, enterprise employee, an academic, a lawyer, let's see, a journalist, blogger, writer, marketer, a PR person. And the big ones, so just hold your hand up if this applies and keep it up until it doesn't anymore. Are you interested in AI? Do you have an idea for a startup, or are you actually involved in a startup that does AI? Does your startup have traction? Great. And are you a founder of that startup? Great. Pretty good number. And now, are you an investor? We have a few. I think that's a pretty good start. I'd like to now bring it to the panel and see if we could have some, I'll allow self-introductions, if you'd like.
Hello. I'm Nisha Talagala. I'm the CTO of a startup in Sunnyvale called Parallel M. My background is I'm an engineer. I've been doing software for a long time, mostly distributed systems. I've done all sorts of things with storage, databases, file systems, things like that. I've been fond of AI for a long time. I trained my first neural network as a teenager, back when it was obviously the thing to do. And I've used AI off and on. About 2 years ago, I decided to do it full time, and we joined this company. We develop software that helps people put their machine learning, deep learning, and generally, artificial intelligence initiatives into production. So dealing with a lot of the operational kinds of issues of doing things like that. And we're a mix of distributed systems people, algorithms people, and generally software people.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aldo. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been dabbling with AI for maybe a little bit over a decade. First company did matchmaking algorithms. Think of it as Tinder, but for B2B. And the other company was, we try to figure out how to predict virality, so with videos. And then the third company was the best route for money. So it was like AI plus blockchain. And my most recent company is called GPX. So think of GPX as it's kind of leveraging neural networks and glycoproteomics, basically to unlock the human body, human biology, in creating a next generation therapy for cancer. So that's what I'm doing, and thanks for being here.
Hi, Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Kanu Gulati. I want to first apologize for my voice. I'm recovering from a cold, so please bear with me. I'm currently a principal at Coastal Ventures. We focus on a lot of deep tech investments. AI and data enabled is my focus area. My background is I got my PhD in distributed systems, high performance computing, worked in similar spaces as a research scientist at Intel. Also started working with Intel Capital, which is Intel's investment arm, looking at investments in high performance computing, some in the machine learning space. So that was my early advent into AI. I went back to business school for an MBA at Harvard, but joined an MIT startup focused on data exploration, visualization, and simulations called MapD. And from there, joined an early stage seed fund called Zeta Venture Partners, led a lot of AI and data-enabled investments there. And from there, moved to Coastal Ventures. So it's been a little bit of an engineering, entrepreneurship, and now to an investing kind of foray. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Luigi Congedo. I'm principal at Bootstrap Labs. About myself, I'm born and raised in Italy. I've been traveling the world extensively and live in 5 countries. We've always been in love with technology, even though probably I'm the less technical person today in the panel. I have a business background. Like my kind of specialty has been always trying to help technology to get to the market. So that's where I can add value a lot. About Bootstrap Labs, we are an emerging AI fund. We invest early stage, pre-seed, seed stage, and we like to talk about applied AI in different sectors. Thank you.
It's time for the softball questions. Later they get harder. So tell me, anyone who wants to answer, what is AI and what are some of the hottest areas of AI?
So he asked me this question earlier. So, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I mean, if you look at it kind of from more of an algorithmic and technical kind of side, definitely, among people I talk to and so forth, the deep learning is easily one of the hottest areas out there right now. There's a lot of interest in reinforcement learning, but there's more people trying out deep learning. And that's more on kind of the technical side. In terms of the business and application side, just about every vertical that we encounter is a hot area for AI.
I agree. I think one of the, as an investor, one of the things I see about AI is not like where AI will be applied, it's a matter of when. I think there's something like 30 billion invested in 2016 in AI globally. 90% is still R&D. Only 10 are really about like acquisition or like VC investing. So I think it's been a thing for like many years, but today, thanks to a lot of macro technology trends, AI is possible, AI is more accessible, and we start seeing a lot of use cases. But again, it's like every sectors, in every sector you can apply AI very much.
Yeah, I agree. The computer science definition of AI is absolutely helpful, but the more colloquial definition of AI is any subset of technologies or software that can be used for enabling machines to make a decision or take an action for you is pretty much now considered as AI. There's a whole slew, from like statistical and frequentist like kind of math to just more very advanced deep learning and transfer learning and deep reinforcement learning. And so there are new areas of AI just coming in. There's lots of advancements happening. So there's a lot going on in this space. It's hard for any one individual to catch up and keep up with what's happening. I at least am always trying to keep up with it, but there's a lot happening in that space. In terms of hot areas, definitely areas like healthcare, autonomous driving. These just are on top of the mind because there is a lot of investments in this space from large corporates, from government, from state institutions. I personally get really excited about things about, like, say, applications of AI in DevOps. It's an area upcoming now in security ops. I'm happy to talk about investments in that space where I think are real innovations happening. But I agree with the panel here by and large that every vertical is getting impacted by AI. There was a study we were doing internally at my fund. There are about 20, like if you take the top 20 most common occupations in United States, 18 of them are directly getting impacted by AI today, and that's pretty severe. Like, it's affecting the GDP of our country very soon, so it's huge.
Yeah, so I'd like to take a little, I'd like to pivot a bit from hot to problem-based. So what's interesting about what I'm about to say is it's the same thing I said about the blockchain 5 years ago. So there's this big movement about the blockchain and how it's cool. What I've seen over the years is people fell in love with the whole solution without taking a look at the specific problems it was trying to solve. So you found a lot of startups actually investing a tremendous amount of money, but retrofitting a specific solution for a problem that did not exist. I think it's the same thing that I'd like to talk about in AI. I think AI is probably one of the largest hammers in the world. And I've seen a lot of companies, giant hammers, looking for the nails. So I mean, unanimously, this panel will tell you that there's a tremendous amount of opportunities in AI. There is. And compute power is just catching up. I'm seeing a lot of next generation architecture for chips that are going to change the way you compute. It's much faster, much more efficient, and actually much cheaper per compute power. Second one, the algorithms, and essentially the models are just so, how do I say this, so freaking robust that it can actually start, the training requirements are super minimal. What am I trying to say? There's this giant hammer looking for these small nails. So I think I would like to challenge this audience to not just think about AI, but think about what problem perfect for AI to solve. So I'm biased. I'm trying to cure cancer using AI. So think of it from that perspective, that human body is actually super, super complicated. So we're unlocking new things you never knew about your body. And of course, generating tremendous amounts of data sets, and I'm talking about a petabyte per person. You need a high throughput, high compute machine to do that. So I challenge you all. What do you think AI can solve? Rather than, I'm going to use AI to solve some, I'm going to use AI because it's cool. So.
And do you have any perspective on what areas of this technology are going to be dominated by perhaps tech giants? Or what might be an area that you consider to be more fertile for startups to get into?
I think, the interesting thing is the most advanced technology company are also the big spender, like Google, Facebook, Intel, Baidu. Those are the big guys that are investing in AI. Now, actually, there's like all the other huge corporations around the world that are left behind. If you look at where the investment are happening, which is very interesting, like geographically, it's like US, China. They're leading this game. So I think that's something that is kind of, technology company are also the ones that are building AI. I don't know when it will be too late for the others to catch up. I think that's something very interesting to consider. Regarding the sectors, I think, at least for what we see, fintech, finance is definitely one of the most interesting one when it comes to investment. Either because there is a lot of data there, and there is also like an industry that culturally has been adopting technology and algorithms since many years ago. And I think one of the things, as an investor looking for the AI expertise, it is important, but as I was saying, like the domain expertise in the industry is way more important. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about big data, it's about the quality of the data, it's about recognizing specific paths for specific problems.
Yeah, so this is, I think, a really good point. And so, if you look at the tech giants, for example, clearly the sophistication in AI in companies like Google and Facebook is tremendous and is way, way ahead of most of the traditional enterprise. But the applications of AI are in lots of different places. And what people are trying to do kind of outside of the primary tech space is to say, okay, fine, I'm not a tech person, I'm a fisherman, or I'm in healthcare or something, and I understand my space, and I'm not really looking to become an AI expert. I want to solve my problems using AI if it makes sense. And so there's lots and lots of places where these things are applicable that are not necessarily the places where the tech giants will necessarily go. So, for example, I have a friend who's, he has a company that does agriculture optimization. They take pictures of areas of California, for example, and they can predict where the drought will hit. And then that in turn affects the price of the land and so forth. And they're dealing with farmers. And these are not people who are, your classic tech giants, but there's a real problem there. And there's real money to be made in solving that problem.
I'd like to add to that. I think there are a lot of areas where even if there are tech giants, there's still room for innovation from startups. So for example, take, Amazon made a big splash with their Amazon Go, the grocery store prototypes. They're still early, but it's getting out there. And now a lot of other retail stores and grocery stores are waking up to like, okay, what can we do? They're giant companies, but they may not have been collecting that data or don't have the the AI skills or the setup to make something happen there. And now the entire retail space, from warehouse automation to fulfillment centers to auto checkout to last mile delivery, like all of that are avenues for startups to build solutions in. And why not, right? Like you have all this, to his point, there's so many reasons why AI is getting turbocharged today because of low, cheap compute power, good frameworks available, good models available, an open source community out there. And so I think there are a lot of different avenues, and this can be generalized to a lot of different areas where even if there are tech giants in that space, there is a lot of opportunities for startups to innovate and just beat them at their game just by the innovator's dilemma is always going to challenge the tech giants.
Yeah, so one of the things I think that you really need to focus on, of course, is data. Now, this is going to be a bit controversial for all the data scientists here. It can either, even trash data is good. Data that, even if you have a tremendous amount, so my point is this, I think the biggest moats that these large companies can get are the guys who are accumulating tremendous amounts of data, whether they're not good or whether they're good. Because eventually your network will figure out the good stuff and the bad stuff. Perfect example, remember Google's self-driving car? Remember that? Yeah. I've never driven one. How about Tesla's autopilot? So it's a function of how they use the data and how they started with really terrible images and how they just, they kind of coerce the owners of Tesla cars to give them rights to all of the images that they generate when they drive. So I think the biggest moats, like startups like myself, like we don't have access to all of the genomic data of as much as companies like Merck or companies like Eli Lilly. But an opportunity for a startup like us, starting like less than a year, is just accessing tremendous amounts of data. And what's interesting about this, and we've noticed it, a lot of the bigger titans have no idea where to find these nuggets of data. I mean, these giant pools of it. So again, algorithms, GitHub, Bitbucket, tremendous amount of algorithms. Compute power, you can go cloud, you can go titans. The game, the real game, I think, is data. Whether or not it's the super quality one, but perfect example. Do you guys know 23andMe? So just recently they hired something called the chief medical officer. Didn't we think they were just sequencing our genes to find out if we were healthy or not? So if you've ever tried 23andMe and you tried, they emailed you, and one of the emails says, answer this question, are you a morning or evening person? What the heck does that have to do with my genomic sequence? So enough people answered, a few million people. I bet you a bunch of garbage came out, but guess what? They just patented a circadian gene for that specific question. So let me repeat, compute power is there, algorithms are there, engineers are there, mathematicians, data. So, thank you, single guy.
So the sci-fi question that we often wonder about, how is AI going to change our workforce and economy? Maybe not total sci-fi. I can start. Or, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a, I started talking about this topic about, the 20 most common occupations in any country in the United States today, and 18 of them are directly getting impacted by AI. And I mean, the most common ones are the retail salesperson or the cashiers, and then you go towards, say the office clerks, and then, opportunities where traditionally you need more for formal training, like including healthcare. And all of these are slowly but surely getting impacted by AI. Maybe for a while there will continue to be a human in the loop solution, but down the road there will be more way for autonomy to come in. It will impact our society. Like there's no going away from there. It'll take a few years, but maybe a couple of decades, but it will impact our society. There's also been studies done by the Bureau of Labor, which talks about high pay, more vulnerable jobs, low pay, low vulnerable jobs, and then they've done a whole slew of what is the probability of any job in percent probably when it will get. It's not even like if, and it'll be like when and how probable it is in the next decade for it to get autonomous, and so it will get impacted. As a country, as a community, it's hard to decide on what the common goals are, and I think that's where the challenges lie. Who makes this decision, what are we optimizing for, and what has to be done there. I don't think I'm equipped to answer that question, but it will impact. How we decide our goals around it is something to be thought through.
I mean, I can add an actual example. So I'm advising on a national level. So I'm from the Philippines, and for those who don't know, when you call Expedia, it's actually a bunch of people in like the Philippines, or if you call American Express. So it's called business process outsourcing. It's actually a $30 billion industry in the Philippines, so people call in, they sound like me. And you call in, you don't even know, you think they're in Oklahoma. My point is this, so AI will actually disrupt that specific sector. Why? Because it's, you can automate chatbots, you've got the chatbots. You also have telerouting, a bunch of different things, so guess what we did? I'm actually advising on the national level, with actually the country's CTO. And what we're doing is we're using AI to disintermediate AI. So we have a NLP program, essentially, that it's now part of a, it's kind of like a CRM suite. When someone calls into a center, you don't need to train the agent enough. I mean, you don't need to go back and forth and train them how to answer questions. In fact, they'll understand even intonations, language, and a screen will tell you what to respond. They will even check the quality of your response. So we're using AI to disintermediate AI. Maybe that's kind of the thing. So there's definitely going to be there's a projection, 60 to 75% drop in BPO revenues for the country specifically. And the way you do it is you use AI to upgrade the workforce, right? So yeah, I think it's a balance, and I think it's the progression of life itself.
No, I think I fully agree. I mean, if you look at kind of other waves of technology and generally kind of waves involving automation of various kinds, they always change sort of the nature of the workforce and the kinds of jobs that exist. And the problems usually occur not because new jobs will not exist, it's just that they will not exist for these people, within a reasonable number of years of their lifetime. And that's what I think as a society we've never really totally cracked, but that's expected, unfortunately, to happen here as well.
Yeah, I agree with our panelists. I also strong believer that as it is now for the next 5 to 10 years, we really see the future of work be augmented by AI. I think for us it's more about looking to product that can help a professional or white or blue collar, no matter what, to do a better job. Use cases like a doctor can really read everything that's out there. An AI system can learn and read way more things than a doctor. Or a chatbot that can detect something at the really beginning to a patient, because those are standard process. So replacing humans there, I think, is a good thing. And helping professionals to do a better job with more resources is also a good thing. So I think I'm very optimistic about AI augmenting human capacity, and I really believe that the main challenge for us and the work environment in general is how we make sure that
educational layer, the ongoing learning process will happen in the market. Because the main challenge today is to be updated. Like every 5 years, a new technology gets obsolete. That's the main challenge. It's not about AI, it's about how fast and how we go and how obsolete technology, how fast technology becomes obsolete. I think that's the focus. But again, regardless AI is about augmenting human capacity as it is today for us, at least for like my personal view.
Right, that's an interesting point. Augmenting human capacity for good or ill. I can give an example of ill. So in the legal profession, there was many years ago, lawyers used to have a life, and they would write contracts with a pen. And in those contracts, they did not want to change them after they wrote them. You had to scribble words out and stuff like that. And then word processing came along. And so it took a lot longer to write the contracts because it got much thicker. And now we're talking about AI for helping with contracts. Those contracts are going to be huge. And the people on the other side are not just going to use AI, they're going to have to use AI and even more attorney time. So I don't think it makes the jobs go away, which is leaning, and hopefully that's not a complete negative. I mean, the fact that you then have to spend more time with contracts is not a good thing. But trying to turn to something that might be more positive, how can AI actually augment workers? And what industries do you think will really benefit from the augmentation of workers that will result in perhaps better jobs, or better, perhaps even more work in order to make the whatever they're working on better?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking more like I think the main positive impact for me on like large scale is more about, okay, we can increase the market of like lawyers. Like not everyone can really go to the doctor today. Usually people go to the doctor when they have a problem. What about like reducing the cost of access to the healthcare, or like, so reducing the cost, like improving the quality, I think is where AI will, like augmentation for me is that on large scale. And then how the professional work will change, I see this happening in a way that we're going to be more and more focused on specific verticals. So the fragmentation of industries, like, which is something that's happening already. Like every specific industry is getting more and more verticalized because you have high specialization.
So this is actually a couple of different points. So I think just in general, I mean, areas where AI can augment positively. I mean, you can see it in a lot of different verticals in the medical vertical, in terms of security, in terms of even everybody's kind of digital assistants that improve their productivity, and how your driving times and things like that. There's lots and lots of small things that are happening that are based upon these classes of algorithms that solve a lot of regular everyday problems for all sorts of different people. An interesting thing to look at might be also the kind of how these interplay with other trends, technology trends, like when we were talking a few minutes ago about people keeping their skills up to date. One thing that crossed my mind is, I mean, the traditional model of education was you go to school, you get a degree, and then you consider yourself done. But these days, there's online courses. The world of education is changing, and this notion that you study and then you're done, and then you're supposed to let that carry through, it's no longer at all the case. You're supposed to be learning something every day. And that may not be AI, it may be AI, but it's absolutely the technology arm, and and it makes it easier for people to stay on top of things.
I'd like to add to that as and when we keep developing trust in the AI system, there will be less of the human involvement in the loop. For example, now we already so image recognition, AI solutions, AI techniques are already doing better than what humans can do. Humans meet a 5% accuracy score. AI techniques can do 2.5 already today. Similarly, in speech, AI techniques are better than humans. So this is the first year this has happened. So it's still really new, but it's already happening. Language modeling and translation. Again, AI techniques are making a lot of advancements. They haven't surpassed humans yet, but they are getting there. But already, all of these applications, all of these techniques are applied to, say, Google's auto response. 15% of emails in Gmail now are being sent using Google's auto response. So more and more of us as mankind are trusting AI. And as and when we keep developing more of a trust in some of these systems, more of the human in the loop will go away. I mean, I think for the next few years, especially in areas where there is very complex reasoning required, like healthcare or a deep technology technician, an ultrasound technician, where you need more complex reasoning, the human will be required. But slowly, as and when we develop trust in the system, there will be just more autonomy.
So, what are the challenges, potential growth and utility when you consider AI from the perspective of enterprise or consumer applications?
I'm happy to go first. I actually don't think there are that many differences in consumer and enterprise, whether you're in AI or you're not in AI land. I think the business model challenges, scaling challenges, marketing challenges, all of them exist. I think one of the key differences between AI and consumer and AI and enterprise is how you pay for that solution. AI and consumers, we don't typically pay for a AI solution, like your social networks or recommendations. We're paying by giving access to data. We're not paying dollars. And enterprises land up paying dollars for, similarly recommendation engine or a churn solution, et cetera. Other than that, I don't. However, you can, look at a solution which is consumer or enterprise, whether it's AI or not AI. I don't think it's very different. At least that's my thought about it.
Yeah, so I think it's, I'll liken this again to the whole blockchain. I remember the blockchain in it was even Bitcoin, 2012, 2013. It was the hottest thing, and everyone, every single founder I knew was doing something in Bitcoin or blockchain. And I realized that, throughout the years, we were the only company. So I started a company called Veem, Align Commerce. I don't know if you've heard of that. But we are the only company that actually survived the whole, that whole gamut of the market correction, blockchain, banking, and all of those nice things. And I think the biggest challenge really wasn't the technology. It's pretty awesome blockchain. Same thing here. I mean, I will build up on a previous statement I said. I think there's a great confluence of everything happening. This is the perfect time. Now it's really the question of the people who are executing on the application end, whether it's enterprise or consumer. And of course, what's parallel is it's not as expensive as I remember blockchain mining in the past, where you had to invest tremendous amounts of money in hardware. Actually, right now, there exists a lot of very, very cheap compute systems. So now, I think the biggest challenge, again, is this whole gold rush. People are rushing into this cool thing, and they're probably going to create stuff. Question is it going to be impactful? But again, I believe in innovation. I think people should always try. But I will caution against always this whole gold rush type of mentality. I think that's, for any big trend, wave type of technology, that would be its biggest challenge. It's the early adopters, and it's the first people who are really creating solutions for the world.
I think this is a really good point, and I was trying to recall there's some public statement whose author I can't recall at the moment, but who's basically saying that a lot of the initial AI initiatives of the next 6 to 12 months will fail. And they'll fail for pretty much the same reason that he's describing, which is people are jumping in, they don't fully understand the problem they're trying to solve, they're not fully sure what the solution is, and out of that failure will come the true success. And it will occur, but there will be kind of a glitch there. From the consumer and the enterprise space, there's definitely applications in both spaces. Some of the day-to-day challenges of actually getting those applications deployed can be quite different. So in the enterprise space, depending on whether you're looking at industrial or web or financial, there's different almost everybody's got some challenge involving their data. The data is either not where you want it to be, or it's too far away, or it's too expensive, or it hasn't been gathered up yet, or it's dirty, and it hasn't been sorted and labeled, and so forth. And every challenge is a little bit different. And then depending on what industry you're in, there are privacy concerns, regulatory concerns, model management concerns, and so forth. So those are the kinds of things that people are running into when they they figured out their data scientists, they figured out their model, they're convinced their model works, but now they actually have to get it working. And that can be quite challenging, and more people are moving into that space now with every passing month.
But no, go.
Sorry, I have one thing to add. So one of the things I just learned over the years was to actually hide some very, very ethereal concepts, like hiding hiding the blockchain. I remember pitching to a bank, not even telling them that we were doing it over the blockchain because it was so complex. It was too many questions had to be answered. So it's the same thing for an enterprise. I think the best enterprise solutions are the ones that actually they don't actually don't really care about the process. They care about the results. At the end, if you tell them the IRR is 30%, you get your investment back in 3 years, they'll say yes. But if you tell them, I'm using this neural network that's subordinating, good luck getting to the CTO. So it's the same. So I pitch to hospitals. I have no idea I use a neural network to figure out patterns in human blood. And that's the last thing, Sometimes I tell them I'm a vampire. It's easier than telling them that I use neural networks to mine new things in human blood.
But that's the same whether it's AI or any other technology, right? Like they don't want to know the details of the technology, they want to know what the end result is. And that's what I'm saying, but between consumer and enterprise, there's no real difference on the challenges. It's similar as any other technology. It's at the business model, whether, it's...
And also what they're looking to accomplish and how they measure success are not really different. They're looking to impact the bottom line. Yeah.
So it's really the value at the end. So for you or for you guys with startups with AI, at the end of the day, all these people care about is how it impacts my bottom line. Or if you're a consumer, how I'm able to buy something one less step. They love these things.
No, yeah, absolutely agree. I think trust into the system is one of the main challenge today. So I totally agree. Like, the company, they actually remove AI from their description and they focus on the solution, the scope, and why they do that are the most successful today. And ROI as well. Like, I think in the enterprise world today, there's a lot of people thinking about like revenue thanks to AI system. By the end of the day, it's efficiency. Like you like cost reduction is what you're looking for. On the customer side, I think AI is an invisible element. Like we help it, like everyone helped Facebook to be better at face recognition by tagging our friend. And now the AI system can suggest who is in the picture. So that's kind of an invisible layer that we use, and like Gmail, the auto-response or like the Gmail spam filter is AI. Like we don't really know that it's AI, there's AI there, but we're using AI every day and we don't know that. So customer, I think, is very invisible element, and enterprise is about the ROI, the scope.
I would like to add, the way I think about, categorizing AI techniques is less about enterprise and consumer, but more along the lines like, does this solution need a perfect solution, or can I do with an incrementally better solution? Like for example, if I'm getting a restaurant recommendation, I'm okay with an incrementally better solution. I don't need a perfect solution. But if if it's a billing or an accounting error, then I need a perfect solution. So that's a slightly different way of categorizing, but that makes more sense. Similarly, another way could be, would reasoning be required at the end of this? Well, once I get an answer, do I need a reason of why I came up with that answer? And that could make life harder for some AI scientists, right? And say in a medical procedure, if you came up with the system says there's an invasive medical procedure required. Now there, a reasoning might be more important. But if you give me a restaurant recommendation, I wouldn't care about the reasoning. So I think those are, more applicable ways of categorizing different AI solutions as opposed to just enterprise or consumer.
Yeah, no, totally agree. So one of the things is from an AI kind of techniques type of perspective, a lot of the applications that I see at least are typically hybrids of a little bit of each. So people are not employing pure versions of anything. And the other thing is that some of the most basic techniques can take you a really long way. And then and they also tend to be very stable. And so because of that, people kind of start with that. And then they add more complex techniques as they see incremental benefit.
So the next question or prompt, I guess you could call it, you don't have to stick with what I say. Just feel free to say whatever it is you want to say about AI. But Andrew Ng said that AI will be like electricity. Your thoughts?
When I think of electricity, I can think of it being pervasive, like everywhere. Yes, absolutely. We've already spoken about it. Like I think AI is going to impact very different areas. You think of electricity, I also think of being commoditized, which I agree that there is going to be cheaper availability. both talent and hardware and frameworks and compute and everything you need is going to get easier to get to. So yes, it's going to get commoditized. Will it become state-owned and state-regulated? Now, that's scary. But that's again for us as a community, as a society to decide like how we want to treat that. But no, it's interesting. It's an interesting parallel. I don't 100% agree, but absolutely, it's interesting.
So there's actually, some articles out there, because after this quote, there are people who kind of did a point-by-point comparison between AI and electricity. And so if you go and Google for it, you'll find so at least a few interesting articles. But it seems to be kind of a couple of different things. So, a lot of things about AI are heading fast towards commodity. Like a lot of the platforms are open source, a lot of the engines are open source. As folks on the panel mentioned, algorithms go to GitHub. There's lots of things, but there's some things that it's hard to tell whether they can commoditize. That particular connection between a person's data, their domain expertise, and the algorithm they chose, there's something about that. That's where your expertise lives, and that is very, very hard to commoditize. All the tools, the cloud services, those things can be, but that connection, I think, that's where sort of the crux of everything kind of lives. And that, I'm not sure that has an equivalent in electricity.
I'm looking at it really from the perspective of two things. It's really impact and behavior. So when I say impact, when electricity was discovered, invented, however you want to phrase it, it actually changed like humankind. If you actually think of how AI will impact the world, you really have to think about the problems. And I'm going to go back again to my previous statements, which is, what problems are we trying to solve? What's the purpose of why you want to use AI? And it's really the impact. So AI is actually a very important tool right now for making sense of tremendous amounts of data. And we're in an unprecedented age wherein we're actually generating, I don't even know how to quantify the amount of data we generate, but there's a tremendous amount of it, and then we need to make sense of it. The other one is behavior. If you've noticed, how many people have Alexa at home? Siri, AI, well, if you have an iPhone, you have Siri. So what I'm trying to say is right now it's being ingrained into our lives. You don't even know it. And then it's actually become such an invisible force that it's actually, just like electricity, which you take for granted, you have no idea that right now my entire home is powered by solar power. Powered by solar power. And at the same time, it's powered by a person that I think is not there. So, I talk to Alexa and I talk to Siri and all of those nice things. So it's really two things, right? You got to figure out the amount of impact AI will do. And it really, guess who it depends on? It depends on the entrepreneurs in this group who actually look for those problems. So what are you trying to impact? Next, behavior. So how is it going to get ingrained into our everyday lives, like electricity? Like we take stuff for granted. I remember watching this show. There was like an EMP. I think it was an ABC. It was an EMP, and it was like global EMP, and no electricity. And then we went back to the Stone Age. So imagine that. So what do you think we will be doing in 50 years that's AI enabled? That's going to be part of our everyday lives. So that's really the big thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think when AI will be important enough to impact our life and like change our behavior, that point that would be relevant as electricity. I think this statement is very provocative to just like bring attention to the game today. Absolutely, humans are still part of the equation, but at one point in a lot of industries and processes, intelligent smart agent will make decision. So that point, that would be maybe even more relevant than electricity.
So what do you think about cybersecurity in the context of AI?
So a law of primes. So for the computer, cyber, crypto, security people here, if you have a powerful enough machine that can figure out the combination of two numbers, you're basically, all your passwords are gone. So the implication, well, I don't want to sound like this, as you all know, there is this conversation between two tech giants about the implications of a super autonomous machine basically taking over the world. I think it's parallel to that conversation, the implications of actually having a super intelligent, super fast compute system, essentially brute forcing your passwords. That's not too far off, actually, and I've seen it done. Essentially, it's just if you're thinking of some of the most sophisticated hashing algorithms like SHA, it's just 2 prime numbers. I'm not kidding you, 2 prime numbers. So I can get a billion things to compute that, especially with the new hardware coming up. So there are real cyber threats that AI will both unlock and go against. So how many people here are actually working on cybersecurity and AI? That's both a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is it's an idea with a real problem. The bad thing is, holy smokes. It'll take some time to train those things, but that's what I'm trying to say. It's, I'm not saying that these machines will be able to get into your passwords, but once you get a semi-autonomous system that's able to run infinite permutations of 2 numbers, all our passwords are gone. I don't know if you know that. So biometrics are very important. Even biometrics can be hacked. So, sorry. So both a good thing and a bad thing. So good thing is someone should actually think about it. Bad thing is no one's thinking about it yet.
It's just fascinating to read about like very interesting technology advancements in this area. There was a research published by Google about them doing GANs, like generative adversarial networks, and within like not even like billions of tries, like 15,000 tries, 2 GANs were able to hide what they were speaking, what they were communicating with from a 3rd GAN, so like the eavesdropping could be stopped. And it's interesting. So it's just about who has control of that AI, whether it's the good guys or the bad guys, and it depends on how optimistic or pessimistic you are about this space. So it's an interesting question, but it's difficult to think about what the world would look like because of AI and the threats of cybersecurity.
So what do you see happening in AI over, let's go past 2017, next 2, 3, or maybe even 10 years? Or 20?
So kind of maybe taking that in small increments or some, at least, so what I see mostly in the enterprise now, and if you take, put aside some of the, very advanced AI companies like the Googles of the world, what you see more broadly in the enterprise are people who are either, early in their deployment or about to be kind of early in their deployment. There's lots of advanced techniques out there that are being experimented with. There's a lot of basic techniques that are being actually deployed, and people are kind of starting to, I think last year was the year when people finally felt like they have some control over their data, and then they started exploring. And so the next few years we'll see kind of a lot more production deployments, and some of those will start simple and they may falter, and then they'll start up again and get better. So, I mean, a lot of, and these are all, I guess, in some ways, what you're seeing is kind of individual applications. After that, the ability to connect up multiple applications, create more complex structures and so forth. And then from there, it's very hard to tell where it will go. From a technology perspective, there's lots of potential, some of it intriguing, some of it scary, but how it intersects with, the regulatory world and the legal world and the social world is just hard to tell, at least for me, from a 5 to 10 year perspective.
So I'm just going to synthesize everything I said. So AI will become invisible. So when I say it becomes invisible, it actually becomes interwoven into the fabric of our own lives. And I think the companies that do the best at integrating it into our lives without us even knowing will be the ones that are impacting. And you will see, let's not even talk about unicorns. You will see, I think, some of the most important companies actually come up. Maybe they're not AI companies right now. Maybe they're AI enabled. But the ones that are able to literally creep it into our lives, so AI will become invisible. It's maybe like, I don't know about electricity, but it will be part of our daily. It already is right now. You have a phone, so it's already part of your life. So imagine that changing, and it will affect every single aspect of your life. whether it's personal, professional, whether it's your job, whether it's a vacation, whether it's hardware or software. So again, it will become invisible because it's going to be interwoven. So trying to figure out how to hide the huge technology behind such a great experience, I think it will be the next challenge for companies.
I totally see like, and in the long term, there should be something, an implementation of like the character in movie Her, like, it's super smart, can understand everything you want, can take care of all of your tasks and be your personal assistant. Like, of course it can happen. And why, along with other turbochargers in the industry about low compute, more frameworks, open source community, et cetera, I think there's also, because of new advancements happening, these work together like, building blocks like in a Lego. When you have, say, 3 to 5 components, you can make simple structures of Lego. But if you have 15 different kinds of Lego structures, you can make way more complex structures. People have made like the Sydney Opera House by Lego blocks only. So I think it's hard for us to even imagine what that world would look like once we have more of these technologies become mainstream and production level ready. But it should happen.
Yeah, I have a very similar view. I think the next 5 years, we'll see a lot of application going to production. And that will result into humans start interacting with virtual agents. And then after that, like 5 to 10, 5 to 20 years, you can also have an explosion of virtual agents start dealing with themselves. Like, and that is where like things get scary. And I think at that point, the main question mark will be the ethical aspect into the decision that the system will make. So I think in the long run, the ethical component, the fact that a computer doesn't really have sentiment, it will very be important. But as it is today, I think the AI will start changing our behavior, like a little bit at a time. I'm sure about that.
Now, this is a very interesting point. So I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I've noticed that the way she talks to Alexa is different from the way she talks to us. And I've debated what I'm supposed to think about this. On one hand, I wanted to be polite to Alexa. On the other hand,
You're thinking about who's training
should I be teaching her that this box is a person that she should, And I find myself wishing that Alexa would talk back so that she would, get a little bit better trained. But it does bring up this interesting question, like the next generation of college students will have all the basic skills required to implement AI, kind of algorithms and things like that. They will know all the tools by heart, and so anything that they can do in their day-to-day lives that can be solved by these techniques, they will solve them naturally. And then the people of the next generation will grow up knowing that these techniques and these devices are pretty much, they don't know a world without them. So it's, that by itself, I think, just creates a very different dynamic.
I had to tell my 5-year-old to stop being mean to Siri. So we're now turning to the question and answer. So if you'd like to ask any questions.
Well, first of all, let's hear it for our panel. So we're going to take questions for about 30 minutes. We'd like to take as many questions as possible. So if you have a question, come right up to the mic here, line up. We want to be as efficient as possible. Please, no pitches or long commentary, but we want to take as many questions as possible. So step right up. Joe, go for it.
Thanks. Thank you all for the discussion. It was great. I've got a question about the concept of invisibility. We've talked about how deeply embedded AI is going to be in our lives, how it already is. But I also think that there might be a form factor consideration, right? We were talking about echoes and dots in the iPhone. And I think we might have breezed past some of the hardware considerations for how we might interface with this technology. I'd be curious your thoughts on that. Thank you.
So I think this becomes a function of usability, and looking at it really from behavioral heuristics or a 3-dimensional UX UI. It's really the ability of, so I don't know if you read this article about liberal arts majors are now some of the coolest graduates because of their impact with understanding just the unquantifiable elements of human behavior. So right now, these are the next generation jobs coming out. Essentially, this type of experts that actually embed these things into your life without you even knowing. So form factor, 100% agree. So, and unfortunately, some of the hardwired, real hardcore mathematical engineers aren't those guys to figure that out. They figure out the hard, parts of the hard part. The equally hard thing is how you get it into their lives. So how do you think they got Siri into our hands? They just pumped it into our phone. And then eventually you'll figure out that, so for those of you who are thinking about next generation jobs in artificial intelligence, think of it as you are the, you're kind of like the information architect for artificial intelligence. So I'm trying to figure out the confluence of that type of new job, but that's extremely important right now.
On a slightly different dimension, like there are people working on approximation of neural nets, which allows to fit them in like lower power profile, smaller sizes. So for certain applications like where you don't need 100% accuracy, and you can give up a little bit of accuracy, but for an outsized performance or on power or area benefit, you can actually get smaller and smaller form factors. So more compute or approximate compute in smaller form factors, which can just get more pervasive in our day-to-day life. There's a lot of interesting work going on in that space.
All right, so I would like to come back to the difference between big tech companies, opportunities, and startups. So we heard that the compute power is free and algorithms more quite commodity, and the key is the access to data, how you interface to data. And I'm not sure there was an agreement in the panel. If we take the Apple and Facebook and Google, they have access of huge amount of data. So what is the opportunity for startups? Could you explain, for example, in some verticals where you see more opportunities for startup versus what the big tech companies are already doing?
I mean, this is a long conversation, but in general, I think one of the key element is that big corporation, large corporation, they do have access to data, but sometimes they just don't access the data the right way. If you're a startup, you can focus on a specific problem and hack your way into big, data. And focus on something very specific. That's one of the example, I guess. For more traditional business, those corporations usually they do have a lot of data, but actually those data lives in silos. So it's like they don't really use it. Considering that there is some stats out there about in the last 18 months we produce more data than since the human stories beginning. AI is the only way to really leverage the data. And if you're a startup and you build around that, with that specific purpose, it's easier. It's going to be cheaper for you. Because for a large company, they building an infrastructure or like restructuring something, it costs way more money. Those are few of the, the examples.
And so some of the other ones I think can be, I mean, if you look at large tech companies, there's a combination of sort of the companies that offer services and they have a tremendous amount of data about their users, and then they apply and innovate in artificial intelligence to kind of tap into the data. But there's also lots of enterprises out there that have a lot of data but don't necessarily have the AI expertise, or in cases that in more traditional industries, they find that they're competing with small startups that are changing the business model because of utilizing things like AI techniques. So there's opportunities for startups to kind of disrupt existing mainstream enterprises, or to help those existing mainstream enterprises deal with those other disruptive startups. Because in both cases, I mean, the data is there, but the particular combination of data and AI is not there yet, really.
I can give you an exact example. So there's a company called Flatiron Health. So what they're doing is they're consolidating tremendous amount of electronic medical records. So they're essentially disintermediating Roche, because Roche is probably one of the largest EMR providers of the world. So instead of Roche hating them, they just gave them $200 million. So there's a tremendous amount of these different deep I call them deep wells of data that these enterprises have no freaking idea what to do with. They just have all of these pools of data, and
That's exactly right.
it's sitting in racks that no one knows what to do with. And so what I would do is I would get an ancillary type of data and then create an application and then attract one of those. Same thing. So look it up, Flatiron Health. They're two very young gentlemen from New York. Basically, it's just tremendous amounts of, they're doing discovery work. It's like biomarker discovery work using EMR. So that's a very good example of what the other panelists have said.
Just to add to those techniques of how to get access to data, I think especially when you're building AI applications, if you're solving an end-to-end problem, it's easier to negotiate ownership of data with your customers, as opposed to if you're only solving one component of the problem. Another way to think of it is if you especially in the enterprise, if you go after small and medium businesses and collect data from them, it's usually an easier transaction. It's easier to negotiate those contracts, and then maybe perhaps over enough customers, the data corps you generate is good enough to challenge one of the large techs. But that's some other ways. Like you have to innovate on your business model really to get access to high quality data from a lot of different individuals or enterprises.
One other example is a company, Credit Karma. They let you do the credit score for free, and they're collecting information about, like financial information about everyone in the US. And they're generating millions of dollars thanks to this information, giving a service for free. And like for many, many years, big, large banks, they were charging users. Those are like, like in this case, it's also like changing the business model, which is very hard for a big corporation to do.
Hi, I'm an engineer on deep learning and computer vision. So I have a question for Nisha about your startup. And you said it's basically, is it a SaaS application for enterprise users? If it is, my question is, how did you make your platform so adapted to like each individual applications? Because each user would have like different specific applications. How did you make it so adaptive to like different applications, different data? And also for the big enterprise, why can't they hire their own resource to do the in-house machine learning tasks?
Sure. So let me kind of maybe take that kind of in a couple of pieces. What my company does is we provide a software solution that you can use to deploy machine learning algorithms and workflows and interrelated workflows in production, and we do that by supporting existing popular engines. So in like, for example, TensorFlow and Spark and Flink and such. And then the way we interact with customers is that basically, we can import people's workflows, their existing programs, and we have specialized ways in which we do that, and we basically arrange for it to run. And so people can bring in their own workflows. They can compose workflows based on the libraries that are out there in open source. They can compose it based on some things we provide. And so I'm not quite sure how to the way we've handled the adaptability is that we support, and we have some custom glue layers that will just import your code. And and basically get it running and provide a lot of the collaborative and diagnostic aspects around it. So I'm happy to discuss it with you later if you're interested.
Hi, my name's Kyle. I'm from Accenture Technology. I have a question around what are you reading? I know we're all reading When Breath Becomes Air and All the Light We Cannot See, but you're industry experts. You're keeping up on the latest trends. What are you reading in each of your practices daily, outside of the papers that come across your desk? What interests you the most? And it could be a blog, a book, a newspaper, an article, a writer. And what's your the first thing you pick up, or what you wait to read when you get home?
There are a couple of like AI blogs I definitely try to keep up with because they have really good, interesting tidbits of what's happening around the world. One of them is by this researcher or guy called Nathan Beniak in UK. I can post that link on our meetup comments. There's another one by John Clark. He does a blog, I think weekly or bi-weekly for AI things happening around the world, and he collects them in one really easy to read format. And so it's just interesting ways to keep up with what's happening in the world of AI, at least. So that's interesting for me. Those are blogs I definitely reach out to. Yeah.
So for me personally, it's like articles, like online resources, like free resources, definitely the main source. I create a digest, weekly digest, a Bootstrap Lab for AI. So there are like few, like Jack Clark, Nathan London. There are like few like emerging blog. They're doing a very good job in centralizing information or creating content. There are a few also like media platform, like this one Tech Emerge. They actually start producing articles and research only for like AI use cases application. But like for a VC's perspective, I think one of the the best source of information is being in a room with founders and with smart people, to be honest.
Yeah, so oddly enough, I don't read particular locations of blogs. I just find that I, kind of read whatever normally kind of comes into my news feed, which is, knows to pick up certain things. Yeah, and so yeah, that's kind of interesting. But but it's sort of a mix. You can get a lot of sort of information by there's a lot of meetups out there, like this one. There's also if you're interested in more of the technical element, NIPS is the kind of the foundational conference for all things AI. It happens once a year, and a digest of what they show and actually what they demo is actually kind of interesting. There's also some data science conferences, particularly in the Bay Area, that happen a few times a year, and they're usually good things. The Spark Summit is has become increasingly AI focused. So those are kind of some places that you can go, and they're usually very good to kind of get immersed and figure out what people are up to. And so those are areas. As far as books are concerned, I recently read a book called Play Bigger, which I would really recommend. It's about how new categories of business are created and how companies that became category creators, how they went about it. People who are in truly disruptive industries.
Yeah, so for light bedtime reading, you can actually go through Journal of Computational Biology. It's actually very interesting it's very application focused, but it gives you an interesting tidbit of how they're actually using human biology and they're molecularizing data and how they're using it to basically understand how our systems work. So you're looking at cellular pathways and all of those interesting stuff. In fact, it's pretty provocative when you read it because it's So I've been a programmer since I was 4. It actually it's one of the best things that I can ever read, and I've been reading. Maybe I've read 200, 300 journals over the past year, and it's great because you can apply what you know. Are you an engineer by any chance? You're just interested in the whole thing? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so that's one, and then meetups. There's a tremendous amount of meetups right now, so just network.
I'm a patent attorney, so I read about patents, and then I get a new, I guess I get a new interesting invention, every week or at least every other week, and then I do a deep dive on the technology and I ask the question that you asked, what should I read? Surprisingly, a lot of the times it starts with Wikipedia.
Hi, I'm Rajat Mittal. I'm a robotics graduate student at the University of Michigan, and I'm currently working at an autonomous vehicle startup called Luminar. My question was, is there a way that AI can be applied, or what solutions can we find for emerging economies that can apply AI?
That's a pretty interesting question. It's a very long conversation, but so a couple of top of them, like things which come to my mind. For example, if you look at content delivery networks, CDNs, in emerging technologies, they struggle because they don't have the same access to infrastructure, and so now people are actually attempting to use data-driven and AI-based solutions to say, how can I make the data delivery or the packet delivery or packet routing better because I have a limited infrastructure, but I still want the same quality, same end, quality of looking at videos, for example. And so, you have to just turn the problem around. Like it's not just the fastest. It's like, okay, how can I make the most reliable? So things like that. I don't know, that's just something I recently saw, a very interesting approach, and I thought, yeah, like that's interesting. I'm happy to talk more about it, but it's a good thought, and definitely keep working on it.
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting topic and hard to answer your question. But I think there's definitely the infrastructure presence in like or the not present of infrastructure in emerging countries is very interesting. I was like at the dinner with friends in technology, logistic sector, and they were actually thinking about like maybe some emerging country they don't really need to build road because they're going to use drone. That's an example, like, so just think that and apply that concept on everything that, and also like, I think the mobile penetration in a lot of emerging countries is extremely interesting because we can run things locally now. So I think that's also something you should like brainstorm when you think about how I can apply the AI in an emerging country.
Yeah, I mean, in the therapeutics, sickness, health, and wellness, what's interesting is sometimes the emerging countries. So I'm from the Philippines, and not much clinical trials happen there. Actually, virtually none. Perfect example is malaria, which does not exist in the United States, which means diagnostics, therapeutics type of tools aren't really created by big corporations here because it doesn't make money. But I'm actually invested in a startup that takes pictures. They can diagnose malaria using a iPhone 7 phone. So essentially, that's, of course, they're just using machine visioning. That's all they're using. But these kind of, leveraging what people have, right? Anyone can get an iPhone 7 in the Philippines, and they can basically take snapshots, essentially, of a high-res shot of the blood, essentially, so they're actually looking at a screen. That solves the real problem, because to diagnose malaria, you have to go through tremendous amounts of blood tests, and those are really expensive, especially for people that probably make $2 a day, and that's prevalent in countries like India, the Philippines, or any of the other emerging markets. So there's really a tremendous amount of problems there. So just have to figure out how to leverage AI.
No, this is absolutely, and there are other areas, for example, like worker safety and things like that. There are places where simple applications can kind of go a long way in environments that are, have very little connectivity and very little kind of training and resources. There are simple things that can guide people, and they can have real impact.
Hi, thank you guys for the great panel. And I was wondering, can you guys talk about what are the new innovations in the computing hardware space? I know NVIDIA is doing a lot of GPU computing that accelerates machine learning algorithms, and Google just had their TensorFlow computing unit announced. So how do you think the computer architecture will change in the next few years that will accelerate all these AI applications?
So my background is in hardware acceleration, so that's an area which I try to think a lot about. But it's obviously NVIDIA has done really well. The NVIDIA stock price is like quadrupled in the last couple of years just because of how applicable they are to the deep learning and the recent boom in that space. Google has recently published results that their work. They've come up with TPUs, or tensor processing units, which are 15x faster, some 20-something x more power efficient, and of course everybody comes up with their own numbers. There's a lot of innovation happening in startups around coming up with different ways of creating a custom IC or a custom ASIC solution for deep learning chips, for example. Those are capital intensive projects, but a ton of those are getting a lot of interest. There's also academic work happening in that space. And again, I mentioned approximate computing. There's a work going on in that space also, that people are thinking, okay, what kind of hardware can I use where I can, use some approximation but get an outsized return on power efficiency, and trying to see, okay, what would that hardware look like, and what is that I can implement in approximate computing, whether it's giving up some bits of accuracy, whether it's reducing the number of multipliers I use in the hardware. So there's a lot of stuff happening in that space. And then a whole other extreme is, it's also seen as one subcomponent of AI, like neuromorphic computing. And IBM, for example, is doing a ton of work in that space. Custom chips which can realize, what they call as neuromorphic computing, is the whole space there. So there's a lot of things happening. A lot of it is available online to read, access, and She mentioned the NIPS conference, like they have sessions there which talk about the new hardware coming up. But yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, and some of it is very kind of, as she said, some of it is extremely, low granularity, like new instructions, coming out in Intel processor lines. Some of them are larger FPGA, programmable FPGA support. Some of them are add-in cards. There are also startup companies in the Valley and Stealth that are building appliances, super high density, compute engines with, custom interconnects within them, all geared towards machine learning. Kind of another angle to look at hardware is the growth of machine learning at the edge. So, kind of in the IoT space and in general, people are putting ever increasing, amounts of hardware, out in physical locations. And the reason is because they need to basically, the content of data that's coming in is getting richer. Like these edge devices used to measure, values, but now they're not measuring values anymore. They're taking pictures, they're recording sound, they're recording video, and there's no way all of that is going to find its way into the cloud. And so you need to, beef up the hardware at the edge in order to do analytics. So that's another, place to look for, kind of system level innovations.
All right, so I'm very curious about, I think it's Aldo. So you give one example, like a small company, startup, they collect lots of data, and later on sell to a Roche, some pharmaceutical company.
Get investments. They were, Roche invested, not sold.
Okay, so some big company with $1 million. So my question is, let's assume if you are the director of data science in the Roche, and someday your boss comes to you and say, hey, I buy a big gift for you, a couple of $1 million data. So I would assume that data should be very big. We're not sure about data quality, and probably you know some details. Can you explain, for example, what kind of data they are? And if you are the directors, which kind of value you can find out from so many huge of the data and connecting with the business, creating the business values for the company?
So you have to put your corporate hat on. You really have to understand what the long-term goals of the company are. Like, for example, you have to give me, here's the thing, right? You've got a tremendous amount of data. We were talking about edge computing, which basically means you have all of these peripheral devices that are just getting multimedia type of information on different places. But again, you have this tremendous pool. What does the company want to do? It depends on the company mandates. So Roche, as you know, they're a multi-purpose type of conglomerate that does anywhere from chemicals, healthcare, hardware, and all of those things. And I think one of their main mandates essentially is to grow their business. So it's one of their businesses actually is EMR. So for them, we need to make sure that we sell more EMRs, right? But we can't sell more EMRs if someone else is leveraging on the data we have on our EMRs. So you have to align it essentially with something called your corporate goals. So if you, who do you work for?
So I'm an engineer.
From?
So from a small pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
That's I'm very interested in, yeah.
Yeah, so what are you guys doing? Are you guys developing therapeutics, diagnostics? What are you doing?
So it's a very specific area of the medicine.
Very specific area. Are you talking about mechanisms of action? Are you looking at characterizing cellular signaling pathways? Are you looking at drug to market? What are you looking at? You see where I'm driving at, right? You need to understand what you guys want to do. So your boss needs to understand what his boss and his boss, what the CEO says, we need to get this specific thing. Because I know that pharmaceutical companies generate tremendous amounts of data also. I've seen the archives, and I've seen from the top, he has no idea what to do with it. And the problem is, of course, with the middle layer. Essentially, the people who are doing the strategic decisions, the VPs, they know the company mandates, they know where the company needs to go, they know the milestones, they know the top and bottom line requirements, but they cannot connect. And I'm telling you this, they cannot connect between what the CEO says, the shareholders say, and what data they have. First of all, they're so disconnected from understanding the quality of data. Essentially, that's one. The other one is they don't understand what kind of data they have. If it's an ingestion, storage, ETL, it's a bunch of things. So what are you trying to do?
Just my curiosity is like some boss who can make a decision to spend $100 million. Most likely they don't know AI. And they don't know if I bought those companies, how we can get things there. The only thing they know is, oh, data. Some people told me, oh, data. So probably I just buy a big company. Oh, everything here. Now, cook something for me.
So typically, the board of directors tells the CEO, you need to increase your top line, right? And then it tells the CFO and COO to decrease, to increase the bottom line. This VP basically says, how do I get more products sold? And then essentially says, yeah, why don't I invest in this company called Flatiron Health? And basically, Flatiron Health has access to tremendous amounts of EMR type of deals. So you see what I'm trying to say. So it's, this is a longer conversation. We can continue. But what I'm trying to say is you need to understand first corporate mandates and all of those nice things. It's a balancing act, essentially.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my question's to Bill and Kanu. Aldo mentioned startups getting data. So I have a small AI startup, and thanks to these monolithic enterprises that have tons of data that don't know what to do with it, they work with me. So I have access to tons of data that I can use to train my models. So if I did that, Kanu mentioned getting specific terms in the agreements to, so I was trying to understand that because I don't know how that fits in the context of IP. So if I use this client's data to train my model, well, it's my model. Could they ever lay claim to it? Do I have to have specific wording in my contract?
So that's a good question. The way that you claim a patent is you pick what you want to claim. And so if you decided to claim something that included data in it, then yes, they would have some angle, or you would have some angle on their data. And in that case, they could say that they own some of that because it's protected in some way. If you get a claim that's directed to your process entirely, and the data is just abstract, then you should be pretty free and clear, at least from a patent perspective. You still have NDA issues, but the better you isolate the data from the process, the safer you'll be.
I mean, technically, how could someone even argue that their data was really instrumental in the model? You don't really know.
Well, it depends on, it all goes to the author of your document. So if you write your document and it includes data that you acquired from them, then you have introduced a poison pill. Might be too much of a might go too far, but you've introduced risk, right? So what you have to do is, and we come across this all the time. It's when you decide you're going to start using the data to train your program. First, you decide what your program is. That's what you'd try to get your claims to. After you use the data, then you've introduced risk. I would say for training purposes, it's a low risk because you always have control over whether you write down that the data is part of it or if you don't. So it's low risk, but the more isolated you are from it, the safer your protection, or the safer your patents are going to be.
Thanks.
So I'm a software engineer at Facebook. For a large enterprise like us, we have a problem first, and we don't necessarily solve this problem by AI. For example, we have like newsfeed first, we have ads first, and then we have that system running, and then when it scales, we use AI to deliver newsfeed and ads better. I'm curious that as an entrepreneur, do you distinguish a problem trying to solve first and then choose AI as a technique, or do you start from what I can do with AI, what I can do differently from AI? Another possible question is that what kind of problems in general do you think AI could be the optimal method, or even the only method to solve? Like, what's the pattern for those kind of problems?
So I think the pattern that you described, matches what a lot of people do. They're first of all and foremost looking to solve a problem, and that problem solution could be part AI related and could be part not AI, and there could be a combination of AI techniques and, for example, complex event processing or just straight rules or other kinds of analytics, and so that's fairly normal. The places where at least AI tends to be, more of the solution, tend to be where the data is complex in some way. And complex could mean it has a lot of variables in it. It could be that it's an image. It could be that it's sound. It could be that it's, language and things like that. And so that's usually the place where AI algorithms tend to shine because they can take complex data and reach conclusions, and other techniques are not really as effective.
Hello, my name is Raja. It's a very good discussion we had here, going back and forth. My question is about the singularity. Do you think how many years we are away from singularity, given the technology today we have?
I think we are away from singularity. That's my personal opinion.
So just a tangent to what, so someone asked me how much books I read. I read as much books as I watch movies. So actually I like a movie called Bicentennial Man. I don't know if you've seen it. So it's very interesting about the theory of singularity. I think it, to Luigi's point, he was talking about how humans will eventually be augmented.
Yeah, it's actually in power, I would say power at least,
I'm sorry?
The thinking is part like a human being.
Sure. I think it's, is it a natural, if you're talking about evolution? So you're looking at it from a Darwinian type of evolution, like that's where we're headed. Very controversial, but at the rate we're going, I mean, if you've noticed, I don't know if you saw the statistic on this machine. So I'm almost 40, and I remember when I was growing up, I had to call on a payphone. Right now, do you realize how long this is away from me on a 24-hour basis? When I'm in the bathroom, roughly 48 minutes out of the 24 hours. What am I trying to say? If this has become an essential part of my life, you can already imagine the development or evolution of the human-machine interface. So, controversial or not, I think we're headed that way. In terms of year, that's a form factor. That's a form factor question.
All right, thank you.
Well, that'll be our last question for the night, for the formal program. So let's give it up for our panel. And let's hear it for Bill Amon, our great moderator. Let's hear it for the College of San Mateo, the Small Business Development Center, all our sponsors and partners. And let's hear it for our audience for sticking around. Last but not least, let's hear it for me. So our panelists will stick around to take questions one-on-one. The video will be posted to our YouTube channel in a few weeks. So thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you next time.